Okay, so hot topic in the fitness industry at the minute, and especially when it comes to weight loss, is Mounjaro and Ozempic. So two medications that have, kind of come out mostly out of America, and are being used more and more commonly to aid with, weight loss and more specifically type 2 diabetes. So what we'll do is we'll go over, so just as a little bit of an overview. We'll go over like what they are, how they work. So it's actually quite important to understand, how these things work. Do they work? Are they safe? Are there any side effects? And then if we are on them or if we are using them, how to actually manage them and make sure that we're doing it properly. Um, Important to know that this video is just for educational purposes and like it's just to talk about as a topic. It's not, you know, telling anyone to use it or it's not kind of like we're not kind of like supporting it or saying that you should or shouldn't do it. It's just to talk about and just to go over for educational purposes. Obviously, these are very new drugs, so research is very limited with a lot of these things. So we can only go with what we have at the minute. Um, so that's what we'll talk about at this current point in time. If anything ever changes, then I am more than happy to do an update when they come out. So let's start with what is it? So Ozempic started off with as like a type 2 diabetes, something to aid with type 2 diabetes. So it's used for weight loss, and what it does, it mimics a hormone that helps regulate the blood sugar and appetite regulation. So essentially, what it would do is you take Ozempic and it suppresses your appetite, so you feel fuller for longer, which will then slow down digestion, and which then aids with weight loss because you're then less likely to, overconsume or eat more foods. So that's like the simplistic way of explaining Ozempic. Obviously, there's a few more mechanics that come into place, but I want to create or like make this PowerPoint as simple as possible, just so then everyone's kind of on the same page. So essentially, it's a medication that you use to reduce your appetite and your digestion, so then you're less likely to consume more food. And then what we then have is, or more recently, is Mounjaro. So this does have a few names, but Mounjaro is kind of like the popular name that everyone kind of goes by. And it's similar in so many aspects. However, rather than so it's a receptor agonist of two hormones instead of one. So what that means is when it's a agonist is it actually supports and it stimulates two hormones rather than just the one, which is what Ozempic does. So if you want like the hormones, it's GLP-1 or GIP. So it's an even stronger appetite suppressor. Um, and yeah, the same with like your metabolism effects. So in a way, it's kind of like your 2.0 of Ozempic. So how does it work? So this is like a little graph that I found from one of the research studies with explaining how this kind of goes. So as you can see, the red box and then the red line, that's the scientific name for Ozempic. And as you can see, it kind of stimulates one side, or as you can see, the from the right side of the diagram, that's kind of what that main focus is. Whereas your green box, which is your Mounjaro, as you can see, it has a lot more effects. So, in simple terms, your red box slows digestion and suppress hunger, whereas your green box then also boosts insulin and it enhances the effect of the GLP-1. So, an easy way to kind of explain it or a way to kind of get your head around it is that, let's say, I don't know, you bring your car into a car wash and you've got your main guy spraying the car and whatnot, and then you've got a guy that's kind of running around putting the soap in or you know um brushing like the wheels and whatnot. It's the difference between Mounjaro and Ozempic is that Mounjaro has that extra worker, it has that extra boost, and it's helping what would have been or just the original hormone to work. So it's kind of like a manager and an assistant manager role where both together it kind of works and it enhances the effects of Ozempic. It sounds like a little diagram just so you can kind of see what goes on. And that was from a research paper. Again, the reference is down in the bottom corner if anyone wants to have any like further looks into this type of stuff. So we've now gone on how it kind of works. So essentially, what it is appetite suppressants. Now the question is like, do they work? And again, especially when it comes to Mounjaro, like this is a lot newer than Ozempic, so there's even less research. But this is kind of what we have at the minute. So when we look at Mounjaro, your average weight loss is up to 20% of what people started out with. So a lot of the kind of like the studies that were done, a lot of the people were over 100 kg, and then by the end of the 72-week kind of convention, they were 20% less. And this was it's obviously different success rates. And again, like this is just in the grand scheme of things, you know, you can only take it with a pinch of salt. It's only 2,500 adults. We've got millions of people in the UK, billions of people in the world. So again, it's not always going to be the same for everyone, but it did have quite a high success rate. So again, this was 72 weeks of intervention. Obviously, there's a link there to the study if anyone wants to read it, and a citation. And I think what's really key about the studies that are in this table is that it's actually adults, or it was tests with adults without diabetes. So a lot of what you find with these drugs, with the reason that they were created, is to help people with type 2 diabetes. So actually, what these studies were to do was actually aid people in weight loss specifically. Because obviously when people have type 2 diabetes, there's always like different outcomes and different effects. So for these studies in particular, it was just for adults who were obese and without diabetes. So I think that's why it was really key to have these studies in the table. And then obviously in comparison to Ozempic, what we've got is a 14.9 average weight loss percent over the 68-week study. So again, that's 1961 adults with obesity. So you can see that they are actually very effective, and they do work. So it might be a little bit confusing. You might read the title saying, "Do they work?" and then you see 20%, and you might think only 20% works. No, no, it's 20% average weight loss, which is actually very, very good. And the success rate between both of them were almost like 80%, roughly. So it has quite a high success rate. And again, if anyone wants to look at the papers or that, the references are there, or you can message me individually if you've got anything else to add. So the question is, are they safe? So generally, yes, they are. And common issues or side effects that you'll find is things like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, fatigue, and low energy. So it says especially early on, because the difference between Ozempic and Mounjaro is that Mounjaro you will more likely see heightened side effects, whereas Ozempic's not as much. So look, and then there's always a risk of muscle loss, because what happens is that, actually we'll talk about that in the next one, because I think that's a little bit more relevant. But these are some of the side effects that you need to be aware of, especially when we're talking about this topic, because it is very real. And obviously weight regain, if stopped, because the thing is that these medications are used as an aid to get you out of a particular place, but it's your lifestyle and habits that need to change to be able to maintain that or to push forward. So these are some of the side effects and things to consider when looking at these things. So now it's kind of what I was alluding to in the first bit, or what I was saying a second ago, is like the management of it. So what's really important is that you actually focus on nutrition quality and not just calorie cutting. Calorie counting on this medication is almost irrelevant because your appetite is completely suppressed. So you're not going to be able to eat loads and loads of food. What matters is your quality of nutrition, because without the high protein and without the quality of nutrition, what you end up doing is risking a lot of muscle loss. So what happens is that the body's low on food, you're not eating as much. So the body goes to the muscle for efficient energy because it can't find it from anywhere else. So if you are taking these medications, your nutrition is double as important as in like the normal person. And calorie counting isn't the biggest priority. It's getting your protein in and your nutrients. So then you have the best success at not just losing muscle weight, but actually losing fat when on this drug. So prioritize protein. Resistance training as well is really important to protect the muscle, because if you're not stimulating the muscle, the body will just use that muscle for energy, because it's a much tastier store for energy than just carbohydrates. Hydration, sleep, stress, you know all of these things. We talk about this all the time. These are all really important to be able to aid this medication to work at its best. And then emotional eating habits as well, because obviously what we're doing is we're suppressing our hunger hormones, we're suppressing a lot of um, bodily functions. So we need to be mindful that when we come off these drugs or if we're on these drugs, that we need to make sure that our eating habits stay consistent or the same. So a takeaway, kind of like a little bit of an overview, is that these are really powerful tools. They're not solutions. Okay. So they're there to aid us in our journey whenever we see fit or whenever the GP kind of says it's safe to do so. The best results come when you combine it with mindset, support, and habits. Again, this is a tool. It's not like a fix, essentially, um, because your health journey is still yours and it doesn't replace the role that you have to play in your journey. Okay. And a lot of people, and like, especially like I've seen stuff on Instagram, which is why I wanted to make this video. And like, there's always this thing of like, oh, you're cheating, or, like it's not like you took the quick path. It's not cheating. If it'd be like, and I've seen this other video, and it was like, are you cheating for using aircon to cool your body down? Are you cheating because you use a dishwasher because you didn't want to wash up? It's just a tool to help you make it a little bit easier. It's not to replace the thing. The dishes still need to be cleaned, like the body still needs to be cooled down. It's just a tool to help you get there. So if someone, especially again, like you have to understand the origin of these things. They're created for people with type 2 diabetes, people who not the causation of like diabetes, but the correlation is that usually people with type 2 diabetes are extremely overweight. So to be able to take these like medications and drop that weight as quickly as possible is going to help them on their journey to then further see that weight loss, not to replace it. And I think that's the key thing. So when we're talking about these medications, is like they're great, they do work. And if you are on them or if you want to take them or you're thinking about them, whatever, they're safe, but there's still a lot that you have to do. You still need to make sure that your nutrition's on point. You still need to make sure that you're training in the gym. You still need to make sure that you're looking after your sleep, your stress, and you're staying hydrated. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know how much like we've all seen ourselves on Instagram or whatever. You then end up seeing the bad side of it, which then usually hits the headlines and is then on the news. All of the bad stories. So again, as a little bit of an overview, you've still got a lot of work to do if you're thinking about going on these types of medications or whatnot. But it is a very, very successful and good way to start your journey if you feel like you're stuck. So that we will wrap that one up there. Let me just stop the recording and then we'll go to questions.